Hi there, I'm John Cantera. I'm the Double Broker Bounty Hunter. I'm also host of Stop the Scam, a podcast devoted to fraud in the transportation industry that airs live Mondays at 5 p.m. Central. We decided to do this transportation fraud prevention series to help new agents within the transportation industry. That would include brokers, drivers, carriers, dispatchers, even shippers and receivers, to help them better understand the different pitfalls that exist within the transportation industry. If it's one thing we have learned through our work, it is that education is the greatest key at trying to defeat the scammers that exist in our industry. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started on part one, double brokering evolution, after a word from our sponsor.
What is your cost per mile? Have you been hitting your profit margins? Do you struggle with bidding in a way that is both profitable and competitive? Would it be worth it to have all of this information right in front of you? By calculating your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro helps you stay profitable in an industry still struggling to recover. In order to calculate your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro asks you questions about your business expenses. Our goal is to help you understand what you need to keep operating in order to keep up with the game and maintain your business. Enter your origin and destination, and we show you what you should bid based on your personal cost per mile in order to be profitable. Bid smarter, bid faster, bid better with AccuBid Pro.
Now, as we go through our series, you'll be able to go back and double check on our playlist any different segment of what we've been discussing so you can refresh your memory as we go. We're going to be releasing new videos on a weekly basis to help you keep up with what's going on in the industry. These will also be updated every few months because the scammers are constantly evolving in how they do business. So we want to evolve the warnings and recommendations that we provide so you can adapt as quickly as they do. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into part one. Double brokering as a generic term didn't really exist until 2012. In most cases, it was illegal brokerage was the common term that was most often used. But in 2012, the actual definition of double brokering was the illegal practice when a legitimate carrier accepts a load and then rebrokers it to another legitimate carrier. I use the word legitimate here very specifically because back in 2012, we were talking about people who were already within the industry doing shady things. But once we got into the 2020s, after COVID, things really took a big change. In 2023, double brokering was officially reclassified to mean to add fraudulent carriers and brokers from an international perspective, as well as unethical dispatch services and unethical carriers. So the overall intent of the law is it's about the action of rebrokering in any capacity whatsoever, with or without a broker authority, and without the knowledge and permission of all parties of the transaction. That definition is very important. There's a big difference between double brokering and co-brokering, but we'll cover that more in a future episode. Let's talk about the law. And what starts all this is the Motor Carrier Act of 1980, otherwise referred to as deregulation. And what deregulation ended up doing is it removed all the barriers to entry within the transportation system. So it used to be before 1980, there were very few actual carriers, there were very few actual brokers, and they were very heavily regulated. They were governing rates through what were known as tariffs. And the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 helped eliminate all of that. Motor Carrier Act of 1980 streamlined the process and allowed for brokers to drive the bus, so to speak, in how the industry flowed and functioned. But what's more important is that it removed all those barriers to entry into the industry. Prior to deregulation, you had to get government permission and you had an independent board who had to sit there and approve you to become a motor carrier or a broker. None of that matters anymore. Now, as long as you meet the statutory requirements to obtain an authority, you can get one. It really is that simple. Next comes Public Law 112-141. This is referred to as MAP 21, signed into law in July of 2012. And that really ended the practice of what's known as interlining in general freight. Now, interlining, for a best example for those who don't know, would be, let's say you booked a load going from Atlanta to Los Angeles. Well, you picked up the load in Atlanta. And then you started making your way to the Mississippi River. And at the Mississippi River, your buddy, a different carrier, picked it up. You took your cut off the top, gave your buddy the rest. Your buddy went and took it as far as Texas, maybe El Paso. And then he handed it off to his buddy, took his cut, gave the rest of the money to his buddy. And then his buddy took it all the way over to Los Angeles. Well, that's called interlining. And MAP 21 made that practice illegal. And why it's illegal is because the freight owner loses track of the cargo along the way. There's too much of an opportunity for fraudulent actors to intervene to either steal the cargo or to damage the cargo, and then nobody knows who is responsible for the liability on those damages. There's a lot of different elements that play into that relationship, but interlining was officially made illegal at that point. It also required brokers to be licensed and bonded with that $75,000 minimum bond that they're supposed to carry. Now, all of this is defined in 49 CFR 371.2, which identifies the requirements for brokers to be able to function. It also made the practice of double brokering officially illegal, subject to a $10,000 fine by FMCSA and most likely revocation of a carrier's authority. Now, that's before you muddy the waters with the international actors who have been plaguing the industry ever since COVID. When it comes to these different types of actions, illegal brokerage actually does have criminal charges that can be applied to it if there is a district attorney who's willing to go ahead and file these charges. Okay, each incident of double brokering actually does involve multiple counts of wire fraud as well as larceny. With that being the case, it is feasible for Department of Justice to step in a double brokering event and lay out some very serious federal felonies against the perpetrators. The only problem is that DOT and DOJ have been unable or really unsure how to enforce criminal law in these cases because there's a lack of enforcement capacity. And you then add in the international interference, which has really exacerbated the double brokering problem that we are living with today. So let's talk about the international disruption. I call it the internet invasion. So in 2020, you saw an invasion, so to speak, of bad actors who began to target and infiltrate the transportation industry utilizing the internet. In most cases, these are overseas actors who are operating out of Eastern Europe, India, Pakistan, Southwest Asia, South America, and yeah, there are even some of those who do this on a domestic level. So, frankly, the bad guys are everywhere. Being able to identify them and root them out becomes the crux of the issue. To know how bad this problem has gotten, one, it has grown exponentially. In 2023, FreightWaves and Triumph Pay estimated that double brokering was costing at least $500 million a year in economic damage to the transportation industry. $500 million. That's a lot of money. Well, it has continued to get exponentially worse. Latest estimates for 2024 put it at $2 to $3 billion in economic costs to the industry. And this does not take into account stolen cargo, ransomed cargo, etc. This is all just double brokering. So here's how the scam is generated. The scammer has to do one of three things to be able to book a load. One, they have to create a carrier company and get their own authority. So they create the carrier company, LLC, INC, whatever. They get a VIN number. Usually that VIN number will come out of a scrapyard or even be of a random vehicle. I have actually seen COIs where the 53-foot dry van tractor was powered by a Jeep Wrangler. Not lying here. Once they get a VIN number, they get a DOT inspection on that VIN. Now, to get a DOT inspection on the VIN, you have to bribe a mechanic who's DOT certified to do those annual inspections. And they pencil whip the inspection for the scammer. Once you have that DOT inspection in hand, now you get your insurance. Once you have the insurance, file for the authority, boom, it's automatically granted. Because remember, MCA of 1980, if you meet all the requirements, you get the authority. Done. So the other way, and what has become more popular today, is to steal an ID of a current motor carrier. That would be either one, by procuring the carrier's documents through phishing or other kinds of scams. Usually, a scammer posts a load, awards it to a carrier, and then gets the carrier's documents when the carrier goes and does the setup. The scammer can then sit on those documents, frankly, for however long those documents are good for. If their insurance is good for another 3 months, they can sit on those documents for up to 3 months and then pretend that they are that carrier and book loads in their name. Real sleazy technique. The other way that they can steal motor carrier's ID is by procuring the carrier's DOT PIN number. In March of 2023, in March of 2023, DOT had a data breach that took place. And in that data breach, they lost control of all DOT PIN numbers that were active at that time. So if you have a DOT PIN number that you have not changed since before March 2023, you may want to change your DOT PIN number, because right now, that PIN number is available on the dark web. And if a scammer targets you to steal your identity, it won't take them more than a couple of minutes to get that PIN number, file a fake MCS 150, and change all the contact information in your safer listing. Once they do that, they generate fake documents, fake COIs, fake NOAs, fake everything, so that they can book loads in your name and they don't get in trouble for it. You will. That's assuming I'm talking to a carrier, okay? The last way is by purchasing carrier authorities. You may have seen out on Facebook and X and a couple other social media sites where carriers who are getting out of the business are offering their MC numbers for sale. Their MC numbers may very well be perfectly good, may not have any infractions against them. They may even have access to an Amazon Relay account, and they advertise all that. Well, scammers are always looking for backup authorities to use in order to perpetrate their scams where they can't be linked back to the authority. So they may purchase these authorities just so they can get access to that MC number. Even if they only need it for a week, they're willing to spend that money to do that because they make a hell of a lot of money perpetrating these scams. On the broker side, it's a lot the same way. You have to create an actual brokerage. So you create the LLC, INC, whatever. Then you purchase your bond. Once you have your $75,000 bond, which, by the way, does not cost $75,000 to obtain, then they can file for their broker authority. Once they have their authority, boom, they're in business. The other way they can do it is by stealing the ID of a current freight broker. Again, a technique we are typically seeing far more often these days. They do that by one of three ways. They obtain a broker's contract and rate confirmation documents so that they can go ahead and forge them. They really want the broker's logo, they want the formatting for their rate confirmations, and they definitely want a copy of the broker's contract so they can go through and change the contact information throughout it, usually utilizing Adobe or something along those lines, so that they have something they can present to a victim carrier when that victim carrier goes to sign up for that load. Another way is by obtaining similar or convincing email accounts that represents very closely to a broker's email. For example, if brokerage ABC has an email domain of abclogistics.com, the scammer may create a new domain that says shipabc.com. At first glance, if a carrier is not wise to all of the communication areas for a broker, they may not recognize that the domain is not correct. So you have to be very, very careful in that regard. Another way is by obtaining the broker's load board credentials through phishing scams. We are getting regular reports for the last few months now of brokers getting weird emails from, say, what appears to be DAT saying, hey, we need you to authenticate your account. Click on this link and put in your credentials. Guys, DAT doesn't do that. Certainly not by email. So brokers, please, whatever you do, don't fall for this scam because it is the start of a very long nightmare if these scammers are able to get your load board credentials. So that is the end of part one. These are the basics of the evolution within double brokering. In our next part, we'll talk about the different types of double brokering and the variants that exist within it, and how to recognize those. If you ever need help with anything regarding fraud in the transportation industry, you can always reach out to Vigilant Transportation Services, myself, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, at jcanter@vigilanttransport.com, or you can call me or visit our website. No matter what you do, please make sure that if you think that you're involved in a fraudulent event, get help as soon as you possibly can. The longer you wait, the less of a chance you will have at being able to salvage a situation. Not getting paid for a job that you're doing is one of the worst things you can go through. Don't fall for that. No matter what, whatever you do, don't let scammers take you for a ride.